Good evening, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Happy January. How's everyone doing? I feel like I was getting ready for this to happen tonight and just kind of running a couple errands in the time between when kind of the workday ended and joining tonight. And I was thinking how much I missed you guys because we did our one in December a little bit earlier because of the holidays. So I think it was like, I don't know, December 15th or something like that.
You did the back-to-back goal setting.
Yeah. So I feel like I've missed you guys so much. It's been like 5 weeks instead of kind of our usual 4. So we're excited to see everyone and start on some heavy real estate stuff, talking about cash out refi. So our last couple of community hours were more goals and mindset, which is very exciting. That's what lays the foundation for all of this stuff. And then we're coming out starting 2022 very strong, talking about what we think is one of the most powerful tools, certainly in our toolbox, and we think in many other people's toolboxes, which is the cash out refi. And we've learned from doing a lot of investor calls that it can be a very confusing topic.
Yeah.
And so we're here to make it an easily understandable thing for everyone and really show you the value of a cash out refi.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to think about this, a lot of different ways to invest. So, our way is maybe a little bit different than some, and we want to just dig into some numbers, some really good examples, talk about some principles, and drive home why this strategy makes so much sense for us.
Yeah. How's everyone doing tonight? Feel free to turn your cameras on, unmute, say hello. Tell us any new wins you've had from your goal setting or real estate wins or just life wins. Tell us what's going on in your worlds.
Hi, Nick and Elaine.
Hi, Mark.
Mark.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How's
I haven't
COVID
been
in
on some of
neck
your
the
recent
woods?
calls, so it's nice to be able to be back on again and connect.
Yeah, you've been busy vacationing.
A lot of catching up to do.
It's a good reason to miss. How's everyone else doing?
Mike, Nancy, feel free to share anybody.
Doing good. Haven't seen you guys for a while. Yeah.
Kids with you tonight?
Yeah, they're just running around here.
Love it.
Our nanny had a positive COVID test yesterday, so we had to get a backup nanny. So our thanks to our backup nanny for allowing us to be here tonight. It's always a circus trying to get everything lined up here.
Yeah, we did our fund launch with our three children sleeping in the bedroom. And if you ever see me like looking off to the side or whatever, I am just praying to every God that is responsible for childhood sleep that they stayed asleep during the launch, and they did. But it's a little bit earlier now, so they wouldn't be asleep at 7 p.m. So they're at home, and we're here in our office.
Yeah.
I would love to see by a show of hands or like the thumb on Zoom or a heart or anything, who here has done a cash out refi? That'd be an interesting, we've done lots of them. Who here has 886979 says, I have. Mike says, not yet. That is the best phrase ever.
Yet is a powerful word.
I don't know that yet, or I haven't done that yet. I love that. Adam says no. Martin says yes.
Hopefully soon. Very good.
Let's make that a reality. I love it. Halfway through the process, I think.
What does that mean? What does that mean, David? I'm curious to dig into that a tiny bit.
Goal for one this year. Not yet, but wondering if it makes sense to do one if you're planning to do a 1031. So that's a good question. We'll address that. So a cash out refi might be a substitute for a 1031. So we've never exercised a 1031. We actually think a 1031 is kind of a poor strategy. And I'm wondering if by the end, you might think that a cash out refi is a better strategy for you than a 1031. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to find out.
Yeah. Not yet, but we've done a HELOC. Yep. Good. That's a great credit instrument. A lot of what we talk about here, we have used HELOCs to accomplish this ultimate goal of the cash out refi. David circled back with first duplex, undervalued, just rehabbed it, and then increasing the rent. Yep. So that's kind of the first couple of steps there. And then the next step is
You're doing the hard part. The easy part is yet to come.
Yeah. To move on to the banking part. interested in cashing out current home, converting it to a rental,
Yep.
using that refi to buy a new primary residence. That is an excellent
It is.
strategy.
Yep. And you're going to get the best possible lending terms to refi while it's still an owner occupied property. So that's something we would advise clients to do on numerous occasions is they're looking at converting their current home they live in into a rental property. Go ahead and refi that property before you move out. And we have done that ourselves multiple times. All of our former homes are rental properties, and we exercise the cash out refi, the month before moving out, just about.
Yep, absolutely. So it sounds like some folks have, some haven't. We're excited to teach about this topic. We will go ahead and start sharing our slides. And when we share our slides, someone give me a thumbs up or a nod that they're sharing appropriately. Good? Very good.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay. We took out our introductory slide this time, but in case there are any new faces, I see we have a little bit of a larger number than usual. So thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We're Nick and Elaine Stoggerberg. We own Black Swan Real Estate and Single Family at Scale. And we do this community power hour once a month to get together and teach about a topic. Sometimes we do.
It's the power hour now.
It's the power hour. That's right.
It was just community hour before.
That's right. It became power hour in 2022. It up leveled, recognizing that we never stopped at an hour. So let's call a spade a spade. We love to teach about real estate. We love to talk about our journey. We love to talk about the journey that we've helped many investors through and answer questions and just be an example of what is possible, of how much real estate has changed our lives and how we think that's possible for all of you. So thank you so much for coming. We hope we can make a fabulous use of your time.
I think so. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to blast through some concept stuff really quickly because some of these are concepts.
We say that all the time, and then we
going to
go for
quick.
90 minutes. We're going to
We
go.
promise.
We're going to go Nick and Elaine speed.
Yeah.
But ask your questions. We're watching chat. We
Yeah.
have a couple other people watching chat tonight. Thank you guys so much for that.
We're going to talk about some concepts, and then we're going to talk about some mathematical examples. And then we're going to go through numerous real world examples as well. So we find that a lot of people, I think they understand kind of what a cash out refi is, but we're going to start by talking about what exactly is a cash out refi. And we're going to talk about some, kind of deeper concepts as we go. So we think that everyone is hopefully going to get a lot of value out of this, kind of regardless of what knowledge level you're starting out with. We always like to start with the end in mind, and why are we talking about this? So this technology, this strategy, this approach, it applies to single family investing, multifamily investing. If you're an active investor, a passive investor, this is for everyone. Our favorite thing about this is we believe this makes the world a better place. This is the opposite of kind of a transactional approach to real estate. When you invest in real estate with long-term hold in mind, you make very different decisions than if you are planning a short-term hold. You're looking to sell and do a 1031 exchange. So we think that by teaching others this strategy, we're going to encourage people to make long-sighted decisions that align incentives with the community, that align incentives with the tenants, that just make the world a better place to live in the most tangible sense of the word.
So one of our least favorite phrases, we share a lot of our favorite phrases and our core values and just some of the things that we repeat over and over. One of our least favorite phrases is, do you know what it is?
It's just a rental.
Oh, I can't even say it. It's just a rental.
Just put some cellophane over the window.
Yeah,
we don't need to replace the glass.
Whatever.
Siding's kind of falling off the house, but it's
no big deal.
Just a rental.
No big deal.
Yeah.
But that being said, a lot of people don't have the liquidity or the cash in the bank to do these big renovations. So they might have a heart for improving that property, improving the street, improving the community, but they're just not quite sure how to do it. So the cash out refi strategy allows someone to improve a property, have a short-term period where their cash is locked up in that property, but then get a lot of that cash out. So the cash out refi strategy, not only is it great for that property and that street and that community and the person who is renting that property and living in it, it's great for someone who has a lot of liquidity and wants to move that liquidity very quickly and buy a lot of properties in a short period of time. It's also great for a newer investor who maybe doesn't have a lot of liquidity, wants to do right by their property and their residents, but wants to get their money out so they can keep growing. So when we say that it makes the world a better place and that it's a strategy for everyone, we mean that all the way from we started a cash out refi. we started our very first property. We were basically all in for $50,000. It was the entirety of our life savings. We had like $3,000 left in the bank.
And like $15,000 on our credit cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was, we were very committed to the cash out refi strategy, and we still do it today with an 8-figure portfolio.
Fortunately, we don't have a balance on our credit cards to do it. So
That's right.
That helps a lot.
And we have more than $3,000 in the
Yeah.
bank.
So a few concepts we're going to, just talk about what is a cash out refi, why an indefinite hold period is so critical, and why that's so, related to this cash out refi strategy. We've touched on how this makes the world a better place to live, and we're going to talk about that. Elaine was talking about how you can scale incredibly fast with this strategy, so much faster than we think most other strategies. And talk about how this can really change the way you underwrite, the way you analyze, the way you look at a deal, and make it so much simpler to analyze. It really does not need to be very complicated. And then of course, why you should never sell anything. So let's dive in and let's talk about what the heck is a cash out refi. Does anyone want to take a shot at that and give us a just a 5-second or 30-second explanation of what a cash out refi is?
I guess making good use of your equity.
That is an outcome of it. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Equity that's locked into a property is much less valuable to you than equity that's unlocked and is sitting in your bank account as cash, or you're able to buy the next property with it. Absolutely, Mike. Spot on.
Let's reel it back from there, though. Like we were meeting with a physician couple the other night for dinner, and I think we spent a good 15 minutes trying to explain our business model to them. And they just very, very, very intelligent people, Mayo Clinic physicians, but they just didn't understand what a cash out refi was. I think that might've been the inspiration for this talk here. So if you're explaining to someone who has no idea, they know what a mortgage is, they're a smart person, but maybe they've never heard of a cash out refi before. How would you explain that to someone?
Charlene says taking equity out of your home. Jamie says leverage. Does anyone want to turn on their mic and kind of describe how you might describe it to someone?
You ever see the episode of The Office? And I've got my office mug here, and Michael Scott is asking Oscar to explain budget to him, and he says, like, explain it like I'm a 5-year-old, and then he explains it, and he's like, explain it like I'm a 4-year-old. Like let's go for the 4-year-old explanation.
A new transaction, but you are the buyer and the seller.
I like that.
I like that. I don't quite think a 5-year-old would understand that. I get that. And I think a lot of people here probably get that. What else? Charlene, are you raising your hand? Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I'll try. So
all right, let's hear it.
I would this is what I've told my kids, is where you contact a bank and you ask the bank to give you the equity in your home, which is the current value minus what you owe, and you just take out some of it at a fixed rate for a certain period of time, and then you have to pay that back over time.
That's
I think
spot
that's
on.
I think it's a spot on explanation.
Good.
So I hope
love
everyone
it.
followed that.
I hope your kids are internalizing this, because they will
They're
be
going places.
well ahead of all of us, except
Yeah.
Mark. Mark's only 20. But yeah, that is spot on. And I feel like probably someone in high school could understand that.
Yeah.
So really nice.
And then I would just say, and that you can do it on any property. It doesn't have to be your primary residence.
That's
Like-
right. Yep.
Right. Like
Yeah.
a HELOC does. I think a HELOC has to be your primary residence. I think. Not sure.
Not necessarily. It is
Okay.
more common to get a HELOC on a primary residence, but it is possible to get a HELOC on an investment property. Harder to find. I would say probably an order of magnitude harder to find, but definitely out there. And particularly if you work with small regional banks that maybe have done a couple of conventional or commercial mortgage cash out refis with someone, and then they want to offer some other loan products, they might do a HELOC. So it is possible.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So we love to talk an example. So here's a little example we put together. It's kind of a long story. We hope it drives home the concept here, because again, we found a lot of people don't really understand how a cash out refi works. So
I think this is a great segue from Charlene's explanation of it, which was not necessarily investor related,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
So a cash out refi is a strategy you can do for any piece of real estate.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to give this example to kind of, let's just take off our investor hats for a moment and just think about what is the most valuable thing that any of us own. it's probably a piece of real estate. Maybe some
Yep.
of us own a really fancy car or a really
That's deep.
special piece of art.
I like that.
But the most valuable thing any of us own is a piece of real estate. Then how do we get some money out of that real estate? So we gave an example here that specifically has nothing to do with investing, just to kind of walk through the process in what we think might be the simplest way to understand.
So you've got, sometimes we found it's hard to explain how it is that a person came to own a home outright. So we really like this narrative here. So grandpa buys a house, he pays down the mortgage over the course of 30 years. Now he owns the home outright. So he owns the home outright. He gives the house to his daughter, and she too owns the home outright. And she'd prefer a lump sum of money in exchange for a mortgage payment. He'll use that money to pay off student loans, car payments, consumer debt. This house is now worth a couple $100,000. It's a typical median Midwestern home. So she goes to the bank and gets a cash out refi for 80% of the value of the home. It's the exact same loan as though she bought the house, except
Kind of like Mark was saying, it's a new transaction where she's both the buyer and the seller. Let's think through that. So Jane owns the home. It was given to her as a gift. She doesn't want to sell the home because she wants to keep living in it, but she wants a big bucket of money. So she goes to the bank and says, I own this thing. I'd kind of like to buy it for myself. So can I get a mortgage on this thing and keep the house, but get a big bucket of money too?
Yep. So she still has some equity in the home, 40K in equity. She's got this $160,000 mortgage and $160,000 in the bank, as though she had purchased the home and taken out the loan, except she gets the loan proceeds instead of a seller, just like Mark said there. So we're about to go a few levels deeper here. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Does this make sense to everybody? Is there anyone who
Yeah,
has
can everyone
a
give
question?
ask a question if you have a question, give a thumbs up
Yep.
if it's making sense, give a thumbs down if it's not. We want to go slowly enough that this really makes sense for people.
Yep.
I see 1 thumbs up. I see 2, 3.
Yeah, feel free to throw it in chat if you have questions
Couple
about
more thumbs up.
anything you're seeing here.
Feel free to put a thumbs down. Don't be embarrassed
Please,
if you don't understand this. Again, we've done enough investor calls to know that this can be very confusing for a lot of people. So you would not be alone if you're kind of like, well, I'm not quite sure exactly what's happening here. Matt says it makes sense, but I'm wondering why I would want a loan with interest and I'd have to pay it back.
Yep.
So in this example for Jane, maybe Jane went to school at a time that student loan interest was 7 or 8%, and she can get a mortgage at 3%. Maybe her car payments at 25%. Maybe
Yep.
she's got some credit cards at 25%.
Or you can even go on the offense. So it's a common strategy that certified financial planners will recommend. That's a little bit self-serving, but they'll recommend that you get a HELOC or a second mortgage or a cash out refinance on your personal home at say 3%. And then they can go earn you say 7%. So that 4% difference between the income on the amount you invest and the debt, the interest they pay on the debt, that's profit for you. Does that make sense? So it doesn't just have to be like I'm paying off higher interest debt. Like you can do a cash out refinance and put that money to work so you come out ahead. It's a very profitable, very lucrative decision to do
All
that
I
cash
can
out
think
refi.
about is that Jane wants to take this $160,000 and go buy real estate, but I'm trying to stay out of the real estate investor mindset. Maybe she wants to take this money and put herself through law school mid-career or pay for her own children to go to college, or who knows what she wants to do with the money, but she would rather have a small fixed mortgage payment that she knows she has to pay every month and she knows she has the income to pay it in exchange for having this big bucket of money in the bank.
So question, if you do not completely own it, is it based on a new appraised value? So usually a lender is going to require an appraisal when they put a loan on the property. You pay for the appraisal, but the appraiser is not working for you. The appraiser is working for the lender. And basically that appraiser is doing an inspection of sorts and a market analysis to say, as a lender, you probably don't want to lend more than X amount on this home so that if you were to get it back, if you were to foreclose on the home, you'd be able to get your money out of it. And people don't realize that's quite what's going on when they go through an appraisal process, but that is precisely what the appraiser is doing. Now, there are ways you can get around doing an appraisal. We just did 3 cash out refis for one of our clients with no appraisals involved. We just have such a good relationship with the bank and we've been within 1% of the appraised amount, I don't know, probably 30 times now that the bank just says, just let us know how much they're worth and we'll we'll just originate the loan. So usually you do have to get an appraiser to generate an appraisal for you for the lender. And it does not matter whether or not you completely own the home or not, but that is how the value is almost always determined, and how much the loan amount is determined is with an appraisal.
Mark asked an excellent question about risk. So after a cash out refi, there's a higher mortgage payment. And does that increase risk? So we will cover that when we talk about the risks and benefits and disadvantages to cash out refi. So that's a good question. How soon after buying a house can you do a cash out refi? With a conventional mortgage, plan on 6 months. With a commercial mortgage, it can be as little as a few weeks. With a HELOC, it can be as little as a few weeks. When we were really doing a lot of single family homes, we were down to about a month using commercial products, but most people will be using conventional loans. So you should plan on at least 6 months.
And more typically a year, but we can get it done in 6 months. So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about why an indefinite hold period. So everything that we own, we've never sold anything. That's one of our mantras, is never sell. We really think of targeting an indefinite hold period, recognizing that something might happen and you might decide to sell. But if you target the indefinite hold period, it totally changes the way you think about investing.
Now, cash out refi is a great concept on its own. It's a powerful tool. But Elaine and I like to think about kind of second and third order consequences. So we could go do a seminar on a 1031 exchange, and there's going to be consequences to that. There's lots of huge advantages to 1031 exchanges, but an outcome of that is that you are buying and selling a property. And we would agree with Warren Buffett that it's not a great thing to target a finite or a short hold period. Only buy something that you'd be perfectly happy to hold on to if the market shut down for 10 years. When you have a problem with your house and you need to make a repair and you're thinking you're going to sell that house in the next year, somewhere in the back of your mind, some kind of calculus is going on that, can we just, paint over that problem literally or figuratively? When you're targeting an indefinite hold period, you think about the long-term fix. I'm going to be holding this property forever.
I'm going to put the 30-year shingle on, or even the steel roof instead of the 20-year shingle that the roofer's like, well, I can put it on, but the labor is more than half the cost. So do you really want the 20-year shingle?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why home builders have the cheapest materials, the extra thin siding and the extra short lifespan roofing, because they sell the house. Whereas if you are planning on owning that property for decades, you're going to go with long-term fix. You're going to get the energy efficient furnace and appliances. You're going to invest in that property. You're going to invest in the community, and you're going to be really excited in the case of rental property about getting a really high quality tenant that's going to live there for many years, because you're still going to own that property many years from now. So again, there's a lot of things we could choose to teach about. We choose to teach about cash out refi because that naturally leads you down this path of an indefinite hold period. It's a tool that equips you to generate the best possible returns when you target an indefinite hold period. And we think that's a thing that creates a lot of advantages for society. Also, it's something the IRS loves. So the IRS hates flippers. If you flip, that's considered ordinary income. You could be paying 40-50% tax on that. The IRS loves people who provide affordable long-term rental housing. The IRS aggressively subsidizes food and shelter. So this isn't some clever tax loophole or anything like that we've somehow discovered or exploit. The IRS says, listen, if you're providing long-term affordable market rate rental housing, we're going to throw the most aggressive tax subsidies on the books at you to incentivize you to keep offering that rental housing so that it's stable, so that people have a place to live and it's as affordable as possible. So this is something that the IRS wants, and you can have really good tax consequences when you do the things that the IRS incentivizes you to do.
I see some questions coming in. Keep bringing those in. Those are all good questions. We'll kind of address them where they fit throughout the presentation or at the end, but definitely keep putting the questions in.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about scaling infinitely. So
what we love the most.
Yeah, this is what really makes real estate fun. So I would say that any real estate is fun, whether it's one single family home and then you get the next one a couple years later, which is what we did in the very beginning, or you're just scooping up as much real estate as you possibly can. But when you get to being able to scale infinitely, and I would argue that it's available to many, many, many people, even if you're thinking, I don't have that much money in the bank, or I don't have as high of income as I would like to have, or I've got these other obligations. with the power of a cash out refi, you can take one bucket of money and spend it over and over and over again. And so you don't have to look at, say, 10 single family homes and think, oh, I need 10 buckets of money. I'll never get there on my pediatrician salary or my teacher salary. You can say, I'm going to do everything I can to get that first bucket of money as quickly as I can. Maybe I'm going to sell a car or skip
in our case, 100 cars.
Yeah, we had a car delership before we did real estate.
And saved every penny we could. And that's how we got our first bucket of money that we've used over and over and over again ever since.
Yeah, we're not huge fans of like Dave Ramsey, for example. He says like no debt and live this like super austere life. But I do think for a short period of time, while you're getting that first bucket of money, it can be really powerful strategy. Can you skip going out to eat? Can you work some extra shifts? Can you pick up a side gig, whatever it is? And it's so much more motivating if you think, with this bucket of money, I might buy all of the real estate I'm ever going to buy in my lifetime, not, well, I have to get this bucket of money and it's going to get me one property. Then I have to do it all over again. You know what? Let's just go on that cruise. Right. So it's a totally different mindset. It's such an empowering mindset, scale infinitely. It's been, certainly our favorite thing about our journey. And it's all due to the power of cash out refi.
Absolutely.
Let's take a moment to share one of our investor properties. So she may or may not be here tonight. If you're here, feel free to say hello. So this is a property right here in Rochester, acquired in probably fall of 2019.
19.
Yeah. And you can see that kind of that middle picture there from the street. It certainly doesn't look bad, but you can see there's some peeling paint. This is like original wood siding on, you can tell this is an older home.
Yep. 100-year-old original wood siding.
So really high quality siding, but very old. And then when you look up close, you can see that it's really rotting the wood and the window seal and those sorts of things.
All the window trim was coming to pieces, the eaves, the soffit, the fascia. It didn't look terrible, but it certainly didn't look good. And it had been kind of in that state of slow disrepair for
probably 10 or 20
Yeah.
years. Yeah. And in Minnesota, when it gets to where in that, on my side, it's the right circle where you can see there's clear wood showing. That's really bad because we have freeze thaw cycles, lots of moisture in this climate. So from the street, maybe it doesn't look that bad. Up close, it does look cosmetically very bad, but we know that the potential for damage to this home is increasing probably exponentially every year. So it's not going to be a major problem like next week or next month, but if you just kind of let this sit for say 5 or 7 more years, it's going to be a big problem and it's unsightly.
So let's do this, maybe getting a little bit fine grained, but I think it really hammers home the point. So this is a tall house. You can see it's like a 3-story house there. So at that height, you need to get like a lift, like a bucket truck out there to be able to do exterior work on the house. So to repaint a house like this is pretty expensive, relatively speaking, maybe $7,000 to $10,000, $15,000 to do it right. If we were not targeting an indefinite hold period, and if we did not have the tool of the cash out refi at our disposal, we'd be really tempted to slap the cheapest coat of paint we possibly could on this house to sell it, right? To pass this problem on to the next person. And after a few years, that paint would be peeling because the siding is coming to pieces underneath. You wouldn't necessarily be able to tell when you bought it because the paint looks fresh and new. And then society would have this problem all over again, essentially. The right thing to do is to rip it all off, to re-side it, to do all new soffit, fascia, eaves, trim around the windows, new everything, because it's so expensive to get your bucket truck out there and everything that I think it was about $25,000, $27,000 for us to re-side the home.
Yeah, it was right under 30.
And when you're getting the siding, like you might as well get the good stuff. So we got the deep tone, kind of navy blue that really pops with the bright white trim. So that additional siding, it's like twice the thickness of normal siding, but it lasts twice as long. It's like a 40-year siding that's completely fade proof and stuff. And it costs a whopping $3,000 extra. Now, if you are, again, trying to sell the home, like a casual observer is not going to be able to tell the difference between the really nice siding that's an extra $3,000 that's going to last twice as long and the cheap siding. But because we're targeting an indefinite hold period with this house, because this is this beautiful historic home, and if we kind of took the short solution here, it would just look like
it would look like an old painted house.
Yeah, right. But if we took the time to do it right, to do it completely, it just pops. Like this home lifts up the block. This is an area that's in transition. So we were able to purchase this home just a couple of years ago for like $150,000. And this home is worth $250,000. I'm going to say that again. A couple of years ago, this home was 150 grand that we bought this house for. It's worth 250 grand today, in large part because we went and spent $25,000 on this complete exterior remodel. That's going to accelerate that process of bringing back this beautiful historic neighborhood from kind of a dumpy old neighborhood to this really classy old neighborhood with lots of homes that have had these exterior remodels. None of this would happen without the cash out refi. None of this would happen without the indefinite hold period. Someone should have done this 10 years ago. Someone should have done this exterior remodel on this home 10 years ago. They slapped a coat of paint on it. We bought it in 2019 with peeling paint on it. I was kind of surprised it conformed for a loan, actually. And we're so glad we did this. Every time I drive by this home, it just puts a big smile on my face. This home leaps out at you on the block. And I have no doubt that, it's contagious. Other people are going to do big exterior remodels on their home. It's going to lift up the value of the block. It's going to totally change the character of the neighborhood in a really positive way. So we think that it's nice to talk about aspirational things like goal setting and having, yourself surrounded by people who have really great mindset and everything. But in real estate, we have the rare privilege to make the world a better place to live in the most tangible sense of the word. How does it make you feel as a tenant to walk into a house with peeling paint? How does it make you feel as a member of the community to drive by a dumpy old house with peeling paint every day versus a beautiful new home? This is a cosmetic thing. This is not a functional thing. This is a cosmetic thing. It would be a functional thing in just a couple of years because the paint was coming off. Here's the kicker to all this. We did all these renovations and then immediately did a cash out refi like the following month. We did this huge renovation in preparation for that cash out refi. So the investor had to have a significant cash outlay, $25,000, $30,000, but only for a short period of time, and then immediately got that money back out and more. You almost always make a profit when you do renovations, smartly to a property. So it's a win, 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 win. Like everybody wins with this strategy, with this tool when it's used the right way.
Awesome. Let's talk about a yield play. So we've talked some about just kind of an overall, what is a cash out refi? We did that grandfather, granddaughter example. Then we talked about a big value add, and we're going to circle back to value add again. But let's talk about yield play. Number one, to just keep going through these concepts over and over, but then also because the market has shifted. And it was much easier to do a cash out refi, say 5, 7, 10 years ago. And sometimes I hear people say, well, that was possible for you then.
Yep.
That's not possible for me today.
Must have been nice when there were, 20 foreclosures on the market, forgetting the fact that no one had any money and no one had any credit at the time. There were deals everywhere, but no money. It's either one or the other.
So it's always a good time to buy. It's always a good time to get in the game, to grow your game. There are challenges at all times. Yes, it was easier. Let's acknowledge it was easier to do a cash out refi several years ago. The strategy is different, but it's still very possible. And so we're doing a yield play to show what someone might do in a market like last spring or the market that we're coming up to in this spring. So in this example, an investor is buying a home for $250,000. You might be able to find a home for that amount in Rochester. Certainly last year you could. Maybe we're bumping it up to $275,000 this year, but certainly you can get a nice single family home in many portions of the country for $250,000. That home rents for $2,000 per month. The first thing I want you to hear is that doesn't meet that sneaky 1% rule.
Oh,
It doesn't-
terrible deal.
It doesn't matter. Just
Well,
know that
don't
it
buy
doesn't
it.
matter. And you get a loan.
There's no value add play. There's no, way to force appreciation, and you don't meet the 1% rule. How could you possibly make money at this?
I don't know. Let's teach them. So this investor gets a loan at an 80% loan to value, 3.5% interest rate, and a 25-year amortization. So if you're looking at that and you're thinking, that's kind of odd, or maybe you're looking at that and you say, that's not a conventional mortgage. What we did here was we purposefully upped the ante to make it that this is an investor who had to get a commercial mortgage.
Maybe they'd exhausted their conventional loans. Maybe they couldn't meet the DTI, debt to income or debt service coverage ratio requirements for a conventional loan, and they had to get a commercial loan on this property.
So they have a bit of a higher interest rate and a lower amortization, which means their mortgage payment is going to be a little bit higher. So their down payment is $50,000. We kept things simple. We didn't talk about closing costs and those sorts of things, but just know that there's a $50,000 down payment. And then in the next slide, we're going to go over very carefully how we get these next two numbers.
But it's not a 10% cash on cash. So how,
I
again,
don't-
I don't know how you're making money at this.
I don't know. So this particular deal in year one has a 34% total annualized rate of return. That's what ROR is, rate of return. And again, we're going to walk you through that very slowly and carefully in the next slide. So don't let your mind go into confusion. If you're finding yourself saying things like, I'm not good at math, or I can't follow this, or it's too late at night, I promise you that's not true. I promise you you're capable of doing it. We're going to walk you through it as slowly as we need to go to make sure everyone understands. This home has a 7% cash on cash rate of return. That number has ratcheted down every year. So we made this slide probably about a year ago. Today we're
Probably 4% or something like that.
4 to 5%. Again, it's getting harder. The strategy's shifting, but there's still a viable strategy here. We're only penciling in a 3.4% annual organic appreciation. You might also call that market appreciation. Who wants to, Dr. Una said it's too late at night. You can do math even late at night. I know you can. I know you
there's
can.
two of you in the Zoom room there. So between the two of you, surely you can figure that out.
One of you can sleep and one of you can do math. Who wants to tell me what you think market appreciation has been over the last 12 months? Pop it into chat or raise your hand, shout it out. Does anyone think it's been 3.4%, 19%? Some markets
Spot
have
on.
seen that. Yep. What other numbers? 15.
15%. Yep.
Yep. 10 to 15, 12, 20.
So the hotter
Yeah.
markets are going to be 20%, the cooler markets, in the low teens, but that 15% number is spot on. 19% is not a bad number.
Yeah.
13.5% is our market here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So just put a 1 in front of that. If you go back 100 years though, so not cherry picking data from high and low cycles, because it has a huge, impact on your number. And you look at all residential single family homes existing, so not new construction, because new construction is a little bit different, in urban areas for the last 100 years, you end up with a 3.4% appreciation rate. I would say that's the closest thing there is to a gold standard for a figure to plug into your calculator for appreciation, because you're probably buying an existing home in an established market that's in an urban area. So we're not looking at rural areas. And so there's ups and there's downs. There's years when there's 20%, and then years when there's negative 5% or whatever. That's the closest thing there is to a gold standard. And the past 12 months, that's been a very conservative figure indeed.
So we're penciling in a 3% annual increase in rent, insurance, taxes, and repairs. Again, this year's been crazy. So like 11% rent increase across the country. Taxes are going up in most places. Certainly repairs are going up in most places, but we're penciling in very normal numbers. We're not, again, the picture I'm trying to paint here is we're not painting some sort of mythical unicorn deal that if you have 100 friends who are real estate investors, one of you gets this deal per year.
It's a very boring
This
deal.
is a deal that if there's 100 of you in the room, probably 95 of you can find this pretty easily. No forced appreciation. So someone asked a little earlier, does a home really appreciate enough in 6 months to be able to do a cash out refi? In general, no. Usually there has to be some type of renovation to do it that quickly. So in this deal, there's no forced appreciation. You're just buying a good home on a good block and operating it efficiently. And we're going to show you how you can do a cash out refi in about 3 to maybe at most 5 years.
So don't glaze over here. I know there's a lot of numbers on the screen, but I wanted to show our work, so to speak, here. So you've probably seen spreadsheets like this before. This is our calculator. If you've taken our course, we teach you how to build a calculator, and we've taught a class on building a calculator in the community hour before. So you can see year 1 through 5 there, and we've got kind of an abridged calculation, and then some kind of summary assumptions there at the bottom, walking through how this math works.
The only thing that's really different here in this calculator is where you see all those lines. That's where you would have your property taxes, your insurance, your management. And I just condensed all of that and summarized it into expenses so that it could fit on one slide here. But it's the exact same pro forma calculator we use for all of our deals, whether it's a single family home or an 8-figure multifamily community?
So if you look at these numbers, they're going to be really similar to other numbers you've probably seen from us before. In year one, it's always the most challenging year. And in reality, year one is probably worse than this. There's always way more incidental expenses bringing a rental property online than you'd expect. Year one is typically a cash flow negative year, and then things rebound quickly in years, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can see we start out at like a 7% cash on cash rate of return. We're generating $3,600 a year in cash flow. Our debt pay down is $5,000 per year, and our organic appreciation is $8,500 per year. It's very easy to note that we're getting $13,500 in debt pay down and appreciation in our equity drivers versus only $3,700 a month in cash flow. So, cash flow is critical, but cash flow is a defensive metric that you need to track. You need to make sure you're cash flow positive. You need to make sure you can make your debt service coverage. You can make your mortgage payments, and they don't take the house away. You can pay for maintenance and CapEx items when they arise. But cash flow is just never going to make you rich. That's just not how real estate works. Equity always trumps cash flow 2, 3, and lately like 5-fold with all the organic appreciation that we've seen.
I remember the years where I would come home from medical school or residency or something, and I would say, and we were doing deals that back then cash flowed, let's say $500 a door. Cash flow was more predominant earlier in the market cycle. And I would come home and I would still say, Nick, at $500 a door, we're going to be doing this forever. I'm like, okay, we're buying like 5 a year. That's $2,500 a month. Like with the goals that we have, like, Nick, I'm going to be like 80 by the time. Are you sure we have a plan here? And then there's such an emphasis on cash flow, and we have a really nuanced perception of cash flow. So do we invest for cash flow? Not really. It's going to take a lot of houses to really set yourself free with cash flow, or a lot of doors if you're in multifamily. But when you take the entire picture, you can get to financial freedom very quickly. And we think that your deals at least need to be cash flow positive, at least a little bit, at least enough to make sure you're able to cover all of your expenses, plus any bumps and bruises along the way. And then your cash flow is a portion of your financial freedom, but it's really those other buckets that really accelerates things and lets you get to that financial freedom in 5 years or 10 years that you've heard about.
This year, it's possible we could have, let's say, 8 figures in cash out refis across all of our deals. So over $10 million in net cash out refi proceeds. That number is so much bigger than all of the cash flow we have ever made on our entire portfolio combined. There's no way we've had $1 million in cash flow. It's 6 figures, but it's just not that much money.
We have over the last 10 years, but like not in any given year.
You think we've had 7 figures in cash flow in 10 years? You think so?
Yeah.
I guess
just barely.
Yeah. So it's this cash out refi tool. That's how you convert this equity into cash. That something that can put food on the table or go out and buy more properties if you have that addiction as we do. So just walking through this, you can see how we have $17,000 per year in cash flow appreciation, debt pay down now. Only $3,600 that's cash flow. So you got to make sure that you're not banking on a bunch of kind of fantasy appreciation stuff. And debt pay down is a little bit more real equity, so to speak, but it's still not gonna make your debt service payment. It's not gonna pay for a CapEx event like a new roof or new water heater or something like that. Year 2, we make $18,000. Year 3, we make $19,000. And then let's stop for a second, because when we add that up, we've had $55,000 of total profit just in the first 3 years of operating this relatively boring investment property. Our down payment on the house is only $50,000. So all we need to do is execute a cash out refi to convert that equity into cash. And at that point, we've recovered our down payment and we can repeat the process and do it all over again. If we wanted to continue through year 4, we'd have $74,000 in total profit. And that at that point, it'd be a really safe cash out refi where we're certain we'd get a full cash out refi. So at the end of year 4, let's say we get an 80% LTV loan. It gives us $218K in cash out refi proceeds. Our mortgage is paid all the way down to $180,000 by then. So we're going to get $40,000 of cash back, plus the $17,500 we've already made in cash flow. We get a new mortgage, and we get to keep the house. Like the house keeps paying down the mortgage and keeps appreciating and keeps cash flowing. The cash flow is going to be lower because we've increased our leverage, but we get to keep the house and we have the capital to go buy another house and another house and another house. Hopefully you can see in short order, you can have an exponential scaling to your real estate portfolio with this strategy.
Can I get some thumbs ups or thumbs down? Just kind of get a sense of how people are feeling, understanding things. Got a thumbs up there.
Can I ask a question?
Fire away.
Yeah.
The cash out refi is not taxed. That's the advantage, right? It's not considered an
Totally
income.
tax-free because there's
So
debt
that's
behind
okay.
it.
That
right.
makes total sense. Okay.
Yep. So
got
to
it.
the IRS, that's not income. To your bank account, it's income. I mean, you do need to make sure on your balance sheet you have, the mortgage column there. But it's money that you can do something with. But you're absolutely right. There's no tax consequences, which is why I would argue that, potentially a 1031, which is a way to defer taxes, it's a useful strategy. But if you can get all the money that you want and keep the property and then go buy the next property anyway, then you have two properties. You don't need to do the 1031. So maybe the cash out refi can replace the 1031 strategy.
Thank you, because I have a lot of equity in my primary home, which I'm hesitant to take out, but I might do it now and we'll see. Thank you.
Love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love it.
HELOC is an incredibly powerful tool.
Awesome. So one of the things that I say to, potential investors is this is like a pretty plain Jane kind of boring deal. This is like, you're not doing any value add. You're not hunting for a great deal. You're not getting the best debt possible out there. You're not doing anything to improve the property or really push rents. You're just kind of shuffling some paper and buying a property.
And it's so boring in year one, like 3,600 a year in cash flow. You're gonna need like 20 of these things. And if you buy, let's say, one a year, I mean, it's gonna be 20 years to get to financial freedom.
Gonna be a slog,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But if you can just do this for 4 years, then in year 5, your house number 1 just had a baby, and that baby's name is house number 5. And in year 6, house number 2 has a baby, and that name is house number 6. And so then you just have to work hard for 4 years, and it's not even really working hard. It's buying like a mediocre deal and like running it mediocrely with like minimal rent increases and minimal appreciation.
There's full freight property management costs in here. This is assuming you're hiring a handyman for maintenance. This is a really boring deal that anybody in this Zoom room should be able to do. And literally, if you just do this for about 5 to 7 years, you will be a millionaire. If you start out at zero and you're able to save some money and you're able to buy one of these houses each year, you will be a millionaire in 5 to 7 years. It's mathematically unavoidable.
Yep. And when your first house buys a house for you that you didn't actually pay any money for, man, that is a good feeling. We call it houses having house babies. But that house in year 5, that house number 1 bought for you, man, that is a good feeling. And then you can just repeat that and you can just go as far as you want. And then in year, say 8 or 10, house number 1 has another baby. So house number 1 buys house number 5. It also buys house number 9 or 10 for you. And you just keep going. And again, this is doing nothing fancy.
Yep.
No value add, nothing like that.
You want to do some Q&A here? Take a little.
Sure. Yeah. Let's
Okay.
answer a couple things there.
Yeah. So are you adding cash flow appreciation and debt pay down sum as total income for each year? Total profit, but not income. So there's different ways to think about that terminology there. But you need to execute a cash out refi in order to realize that profit as income, as cash that goes in your pocket. So yes, we're adding up the cash flow appreciation, debt pay down as the total profit for each year, and that appreciation is kind of tenuous. That's until you do the refi. And realize it, it's just something that exists on a spreadsheet.
John asked, does this strategy work on multifamily buildings too? Yes.
Much better, in fact.
Yeah, much better. It's much easier because appraisers in multifamily know that multifamily buildings are businesses. And so they're just looking at income. And the refi process is much simpler. So we're going to do 2 examples with large multifamily projects at the end here. Excellent question. Matt asked, so you have an initial mortgage, then you have your second mortgage, which is your cash out refi. So not like a second lien, but the second mortgage in order. Your cash flow decreases because of the added second mortgage. Yes, absolutely. Let's be very clear about that. Your mortgage payment is going to go up. Now, by then, your rents should have gone up too. So they're going to offset each other a little bit, but you should know that you are likely exchanging, I don't know, let's say $50 or $100 per month in cash flow in exchange for getting 5 figures into your bank account. I would argue that even if your plan is to just put that money in the bank and just pay off the mortgage, you still have security because you have 5 figures in the bank that you can use as your emergency fund or who knows what,
Far more security.
versus the bank having that money in the bank. Does
You're-
that make sense? Like there's the house and either the bank has the equity or you have the equity. I would rather you have the equity, but you're absolutely right that it does decrease your cash flow a little bit.
Yep.
Um,
What happens if the market tanks and your home loses its value? Uh-oh. So this is a huge advantage of this strategy. By targeting an indefinite hold period, we're setting ourselves up for failure with the ebbs and flows of the market. So let's say we're targeting like a 3 to 5 year hold period, and we get debt and we execute a business plan that is aligning with that. And then there's a downturn.
and it will happen.
And it will happen.
If your plan is to never sell, you need to know that you're going to hit downturns,
Yep.
period.
Yep.
They come every 7-ish years. We should be in one right now, and we're not because of COVID and some other things, but they do happen. Absolutely. It will happen.
Yeah. You don't have to sell the property, and in all likelihood, you'll actually come out better on an appraisal than you will in a market transaction in the event of a downturn. That's just how the appraisal system works. And when the market's going up, the appraisals don't quite keep up, and you can have shortfalls in appraisals. When the market goes down, the appraisers say, you know what, last week it was worth this much. This week I know it's worth less, but I'm going to give you the value for last week because I know that that's what a sane market would reflect. So this strategy is much more resilient to system shocks, to swings in the market than a short hold period strategy.
One of the things that we recommend is do not refi yourself into cash flow negative. So you have to have at least a little bit of cash flow every month so that if you do hit that downturn, you can just ride through it. You can sleep well at night. You can know that it's cash flowing and that the value will go back up.
All right. Well, we should.
Holt says, seems like it takes you kind of scrolled there.
Sorry.
Seems like it takes a long time to get your money back. You're paying the down payment on the homes for 5 years. Yes. So we would consider this to be like a worst case scenario. This is like the boringest, most vanilla.
A boring scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. This is like nothing fancy, but I would say that if someone can buy 4 houses in 4 years and then get free houses after that and reach financial freedom, I don't think that's a bad life.
Yep.
But yes, you're right that this is like a 5-year strategy.
Yep. Absolutely. We've got a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of material to cover.
Never sell. So we talked about why you never sell. We talked about, you're going to hit those downturns in the market. You just hold tight. It's going to cash flow.
Here's the 1031 exchange question.
Yeah. So let's talk about Golden Goose Real Estate. When we made our logo for single family at scale, we specifically asked our designer to turn our swan body gold to reflect our cash out refi strategy. So this is just a different way to walk you through the math because different people kind of understand things differently. So we have the asset value at year 5 is $281,000. So this is that original home. Our debt, we started out with a $200,000 mortgage because remember we paid $250,000, but we had a $50,000 down payment. In the first 5 years, we've had $27,000 of debt pay down. So the mortgage is now $173,000. So we could sell. We could decide, you know what, I'm supposed to.
So this is the example we just talked about. So we've gotten to year 5 in our previous example. And now we're going to ask ourselves, should we sell?
Aren't we
and
supposed to?
1031.
Shouldn't we buy
into the next
something
thing?
bigger? Shouldn't
Right.
we graduate?
Or do
Shouldn't
we do
grow
a cash
up?
out refi?
Yeah. So why don't you do the sell option?
Yeah, because I love to sell. So let's say that you net 93%. So people frequently, miss the fact that there are huge transactional costs associated with selling. It's way cheaper and easier and quicker to refi than it is to sell. It's always easier to hang on to the thing you already have. Most of your costs are getting into the asset and getting out of the asset. So once you're already in, why'd you want to get out? So let's say you net 93%, your true net might be a little bit less than that. If you've got, it doesn't sell instantly, the market's not on fire. So I think 93% is actually maybe a slightly favorable number there. Maybe 92% would be a more favorable number. But you're going to get 261K out of your total value of 281K. So you're going to get 88K in net sale proceeds. So that's 261K minus the 173K that you owe on it. from your loan pay down. So you originally put 50K in 5 years ago. So you've made 30K in equity profit plus 23K in cash flow, 61K in total profits. You put 50K in, you made 61K in 5 years. You have more than doubled your money in 5 years. That's a hell of a return. That's close to like a 20%, like a 17% total annualized rate of return. You're blowing away what you get on the stock market. That's a fantastic return. Now you do owe a capital gains tax on that. It's a long-term capital gains, not a short-term. Although that bracket could be the same here soon. But it's important to realize that there are significant tax consequences to this, and your net proceeds are about 61,000. That's your final outcome from your sell option. So what might be an alternative to selling this thing so we can 1031 up the ladder?
So you could refi, you do cash out refi. So in year 5, the house is worth 281,000. So you get a loan at 80%. So 281,000 times 80% is a new mortgage of 225,000. You need to pay off your original mortgage of 153,000. So you get 225 minus 173. That means you get $52,000. So you'll get that in a cash, in a check at closing. You'll get a check for $52,000. Plus you have your $23,000 in cash flow over the years. And that leaves you with $25,000 of leftover profit. So you've paid back your $50,000 that you originally put into the house. So you have no money in this deal anymore. And you have $25,000 and you have the house, and all of this is done in a tax neutral way. Yes, you have increased your mortgage payment, which is likely going to decrease your cash flow, but you have all of these other advantages. You can take that money. You now have $75,000 to go out and buy. Maybe you can get 2 properties. Maybe you can get a nicer property. Maybe you're buying, class C properties. Now you want to buy class A properties and spend a little bit more. You still have the house. So you have a bucket of money that's actually bigger than your original bucket of money. You still have the house. It's producing cash flow. It's still producing debt pay down. It's still appreciating. You take your bucket of money, you buy your next house. It produces cash flow. It produces debt pay down. It produces appreciation. So now you have 2 assets instead of 1. I think that's an excellent option.
Yeah. So you could get 61K and then you don't have the house anymore, or you can get, 75K in net proceeds there and you still have the house. Like it makes no sense whatsoever in my mind to sell the house. It just doesn't. And I don't know why people don't do this math, because every year we try to sell a house, at least one, and we do this math and it just doesn't ever make any sense. We just say, okay, we can just relever it. We can just refi it.
Yep.
Like why?
We'll have the house kind of like the one that we showed that we did the siding on. That was an investor property, but we manage them and we treat them all, the same. But we might get into a situation of like, man, do we really want to spend $30,000 on this thing? Can we just like put some white paint on some of those places and sell it? And then we're like, well, let's actually put the 30,000 in for 6 weeks. It's grown in value. The rents have gone up. Cash out, refi it, and then you own the house with this beautiful new siding. It's still cash flowing.
And then you get to fall in love with the house all over again after doing this huge improvement project, which is always just an enchanting experience. We've blasted through these numbers very quickly. There's some really good questions that.
Can I get some thumbs up or thumbs down? Yeah. That would be really helpful for me. Do the numbers make sense? I see a lot of good qualitative questions. We're going to hit those, but do the numbers make sense?
Got six thumbs up, 7, 8. All right. So it looks like
good.
People are following it here.
Good.
This is probably the most important thing to take away here. Like qualitatively, if it makes sense for you to keep the house. So maybe you're self-managing it and you're moving to the other side of the country. It doesn't make any sense for you to keep it. Sell it, sure. But qualitatively, if it's a good property and a good location, it's been performing and you don't hate it, it just doesn't make sense to sell the house. It just doesn't. I don't know why people do it. It doesn't make any mathematical sense at all. So
the thing that I say is, by the time you've even acquired a home, you've really spent a lot of time on it. So if there's 100 houses on the market, probably only maybe 30 of them would make a good investment property. And then of those 30, you look at them and you really only like, maybe 20 or 15. And then the ones where the numbers make sense out of the gate, which to us would be there's at least a little bit of cash flow and it's in a good, stable area that's likely to enjoy appreciation. That's kind of our few sentence investment thesis. That might get you down to 7. If you write 7 offers, chances are you're going to get 1, maybe 2 houses. So we kind of a tangent, but we think if you're getting all of the offers that you write, you're paying too much. If you're getting none of the offers, you're just wasting time. So you want to kind of hit like a 1/3 ratio. So let's say, if you write 6 offers, you should get 1 or 2 of those houses. So you've gone from 100 houses of inventory to 1 that you've acquired, and then you've spent time maintaining it. You've potentially spent time doing some value add. We're going to do value add example next. You've spent time deciding, it needs to be re-sided. I'm going to put that premium extra thick siding on, or I'm going to put that 50-year shingle instead of a 20-year shingle. You've got good tenants staying there that have been renting for several years. Why would you sell at that point? You've done all the hard work. This is like building a friendship. Like you meet this person in high school and you went to prom together and you did graduation together, and then you stayed friends all through college, and then you shared stories around getting married and having your first kid. And then you're like, oh, okay, I just don't want to be friends anymore. Like you've spent all that time investing in that relationship. That's a relationship you want to hold on to. The exact same thing is true of real estate. That's the worst time to let it go. You've worked out all the kinks and the warts. You want to keep it. Yes, you want to unlock your liquidity, your equity. Letting equity sit in properties is a bad investment decision, but you don't have to sell, and you don't have to do a cash out, or you don't have to do a 1031. And if that is your lone takeaway, that a cash out refi is your option to keep properties that you love, yet still continue to grow, both in terms of portfolio size and in terms of overall wealth, the cash out refi is the most powerful tool you can possibly have.
And here's where we go a level deeper. So if you do this right, you become trapped by your own high quality decisions. The market will not respect the high quality work that you've put into that property. We got this from Crushing It in Commercial Real Estate by Brian Murray. One of my favorite books in commercial real estate. And I have the good fortune to call him, maybe not a friend, but someone I know anyway, an acquaintance, a warm acquaintance. And, so I read this book like a decade ago or something. And he said, if you really, truly love on that property and renovate it and maintain it in this immaculate state of repair, it's always worth more to you than it is to the market. If we go put that super duper high quality siding on that house that we just renovated, and we know the exteriors on that home are good for 40 years, that's really valuable to us. That goes on a spreadsheet, and qualitatively that means something to us. Spiritually, that means something to us to drive by it and just enjoy that. The market doesn't care. The market's going to give you the same value as the cheap siding that's going to need a replacement 20 years from now. So if you start with the end in mind, target indefinite hold period, and love on that property, invest it, you're going to get to a place where you say, okay, I can sell it, but it's worth this much to the market and it's worth this much to me. Why would I ever sell it? So it creates this positive feedback loop where you'd be crazy to sell it. So you hold it. So you keep holding it. So you keep investing in it and making it better. You keep doing cash out refis every 3 or 5 years, and everybody wins. The tenants win, the community wins, the property wins, everybody wins.
Yeah. Let's talk about a value add strategy. So this is really where the BRRRR strategy, the cash out refi strategy that we're talking about, is really powerful. This is harder to execute today in 2021, 2022 because of where the market is, but it is still possible. So in this example, we buy a home for $200,000. So if, let's say, we're in the same market as that $250,000 house. So we said a $250,000 house is a decent house in a good neighborhood, nothing too special, but certainly not a bad house. So at 200,000, you should be thinking there's probably something wrong with this house.
Got some hair on it.
Yeah. It maybe the roof is bad and the siding's bad and the inside is all 1970s, or it's a hoarder house, or who knows, but you should be thinking this is a rough house. We do $40,000 in renovation. And at this point, the property is worth $300,000. This is the magic of renovation. So done correctly, renovation should more than increase than the value that you put into the home, because you've managed risk, you've managed timelines, you've managed having cash to do these renovations. A first-time homeowner likely doesn't have $40,000 liquid to do these renovations. It might be that only an investor can afford to do the renovations. So you get more value out of renovations than you put in. At this point, we can obtain a cash out refi loan at 80%. So 80% of 300,000 is $240,000. So that's really simple math. So you bought at 200, you put 40,000 in. Let's say this took 3 months. In month 4, you get $240,000 back. You now have $0 in the deal. You've got a nice, shiny, fully renovated property that's going to perform really well. You have $60,000 of equity. So again, when you're talking about disadvantages and things like that, well, what if the market goes down? It's unlikely the market's going to go down 20%. Could it happen? Yes. Even in 2008, the average downturn across the whole country was about 13%. And that's the worst in the last 100 years. So you still have equity, you still have some protection. But most importantly, you have a house with no money in the deal. If you can own any type of investment that produces cash flow, debt pay down, and appreciation, even if you have to carry some risk with it, but you have no cash in the deal, you should take all of those that you possibly can. And if you don't want them, give them to us.
Absolutely.
Because when you divide by 0, right? So cash on cash, the bottom cash is now 0. So when you divide anything by 0, you have an infinite rate of return. And it does not take long to generate real wealth if your return is infinite. So I'll hear things like, would you invest in something if it had a 10% return? Or, the number that we say in real estate is you should have at least a 25% return. But that's only for the first couple of years. You should be thinking, what's the fastest I can get to an infinite rate of return? And if you can be thinking about that for your whole balance sheet, I would say that business and real estate is probably the only way you're going to get infinite returns. But if there's anything that you can invest in, that you can get an infinite rate of return, you should invest in that thing.
Absolutely. This is it. It took us like 3 slides to go through the last scenario for the yield play, calculating rates of returns. So this is simple, not easy. It's not easy to do a rehab where you generate equity. It's much easier to do a yield play, to just go buy a property, do some due diligence, do some underwriting, look at some properties, make some offers. There's some work. This is way harder. We're managing about 17 job sites right this second. We have 17 active job sites, people swinging a hammer in a house today. It's herding cats, and it's an insane amount of work, and trying to keep up with materials and labor and timeline, and need to get this contractor in and this contractor and this time. It's incredibly simple, this spreadsheet right here, but it's not easy. Anybody in this Zoom room can do it. We're our first sweat equity rehab. We'll run through those numbers here in just a second. We're able to do this over and over and over again just by virtue of practice. But our attention is very divided, having 17 of these things going at once. There's inefficiencies galore. I know that we could get cheaper contractors, that we manage more aggressively. We could buy our own materials and control material costs. We could use mail-in rebates and stuff for supplies from the manufacturer. There's tons of inefficiencies all over our systems that could be optimized if you're doing your first value add play like this. But this is as complicated as it gets right here. We can take maybe 30 seconds to answer any questions that people might have about this. This is truly as complicated as this gets.
And if you're thinking, I don't want to do renovations, I'm a physician or a dentist, or I have a career that I love, or whatever it is, that's totally okay too. Our email that's going out tomorrow, we talk about who, not how. So you don't have to know how to do the renovations. You just have to know how to manage the renovations, which could be as simple as finding a team member to manage those renovations for you. So that's what we do for a lot of folks, because we've built the pipeline, we've built the systems. There's lots of other markets in the country where you can find teams like ours that do that. So you just need to find the team that can put together a deal like this for you. And then you reap all the rewards by leveraging who, not how. So we're talking about how tonight, because we want you to understand the strategy. The email that goes out tomorrow, we talk about who, not how.
Yep. There's a question about LTV on loans. You want to work with a regional bank, with a credit union or a small bank in your area. You go to singlefamilyatscale.com, check out our course. We dive deeply into how to get the optimal debt instruments. None of the stuff that we're quoting here the loans that we get are better than the loans that we're quoting here. We're kind of handicapping it, but there is an assumption that these are all commercial loans coming from like a regional bank in your area. So they're worse loans in some ways. They have like a shorter amortization, but they typically have far more flexibility in terms of seasoning, LTV. They're shorter term, typically 5-year term versus 30-year term. But that's typically how you're going to get these loans is with local commercial banks. You're not going to get this with a conventional loan. Conventional financing is fantastic for a yield play. If you're going to sit on it for 5 years and you want the 30-year AM and the best possible interest rate and everything, it does not work for cash out refi.
It works, but it's harder.
Yeah, it's harder. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent questions. So there were some questions here about like closing costs and those sorts of things. The best strategy, if possible, is to purchase with cash, pay for all of your renovations with cash, and then do a commercial mortgage. And that's what can allow you to do it in, say, like 4 weeks or 12 weeks, because there's no seasoning period since there's no conventional loan involved. If that's not possible, I would recommend getting a commercial loan up front because the closing costs are so much lower. The bulk of closing costs have to do with fees related to conventional mortgages.
Correct.
So like Nick was saying, if you're planning on holding for say 3 or 5 years, go ahead, get a conventional. If you really know you want to do a swift value add, you want to go as fast as possible, start with cash if you can. If you can't, start with commercial. And then on your refi, you probably want to do commercial kind of regardless of which way you started, because you'll get a higher LTV and you'll likely be able to do a cash out refi faster.
So a conventional mortgage total all-in origination charges could easily exceed $5,000 or $6,000 on an example like this. With a commercial loan, we can probably, for ourselves, so we just originated, we did a $7 million deal and we paid $7,000 in total origination charges on that loan. So 0.01% origination charges. Now that's not normal. We are able to negotiate exceptionally good loans because of our relationships and our track record and everything. But the origination charges on commercial loans are just unbelievably low compared to conventional loans, to the point that it's not really a factor in our underwriting.
A really powerful strategy for those of you that are listening that are maybe have a little more savings, a little more liquidity, is if possible, let's say you have $1 million, you're a little later in your career, or you've had an inheritance or something, is to buy, say, 5 of these, and then to go to a bank and say, I have this portfolio of homes that I own with no debt. I'd like to do a blanket mortgage on all of them. The regulations are a little bit different state to state, but just to say, when you have a lot of business to bring to a bank, and by a lot, I mean like $1 million, which is a big number, but we're not talking like 100 million, like, deal size that is not available to the average person. Then you can get really favorable terms and you can just kind of speed up things. So what we did was we bought properties. We did them one at a time as fast as we could recycle that bucket of money. And then, like you saw in the example, you start with like a $50,000 bucket of money, but then your bucket of money is $75,000. And if you can kind of just do that a couple of times, and you can like spool up that bucket of money to say $125,000, then if you're like really working hard and you're putting your own, cash flow and income into it, maybe you can have 3 properties, and it's a stretch, but you can have 3 properties at one time, and then you can do like a small blanket mortgage. So there's all these different ways to optimize. We've tried to present like the plain Jane, I just want to find a good real estate agent, a good property manager, make some wise decisions, but nothing fancy or creative. I still want to leverage this strategy, all the way to, I want to work as hard as I can. I want to be as creative as I can. Maybe I want to do some of the rehab myself or manage the team that does the rehab. We've tried to present things across the spectrum here, but all of it comes back to get that bucket of money and recycle it as fast as you can, as many times as you can.
Couple quick questions here. Do commercial loans have prepayment penalties when you do a cash out refi? It depends. It's all negotiable. So conventional loans tend to be very, there's just a box that you either fit into or you don't. In general, we try to aggressively negotiate to get prepayment penalties waived when the loan is originated. In general, there are numerous ways to avoid those prepayment penalties. If you refi with the bank, they will never charge you a prepayment penalty. That's just something that we negotiate into the loan agreement. And that's just something that like a good lender is never going to charge you a prepayment penalty if you are bringing them new business at the same time. For a commercial loan that has a 5-year term, is there risk that you won't get the refi when the 5-year term is up? Depends. So make sure you're working with a banker. And we cover all this in depth in the single family at scale course. So we spend hours talking about these topics. Make sure you're working with a lender. I would not get a loan from Wells Fargo. Like I just wouldn't. I would not get a loan from Bank of America. I would not get a loan from US Bank. They will hurt you. They've bankrupted numerous real estate investors. Work with a local lender that has a vested interest in the community and has no desire to hurt local businesses. And I have never once, personally seen someone overtly harmed. Now they will turn up the temperature. They may say, we're not going to call the loan due, but we will double your interest rate. So we'll renew your loan for another year at 6% instead of 3% or 10% instead of 5%. Please, we need to get this loan off our books. So please work with us here any way you can. What we do is we typically negotiate that so in the industry, there's a 5, 10, 20. So a 5-year renewal, 10-year term, 20-year amortization. And at the 5-year mark, the loan reprices within a certain limit where I've been able to negotiate no more than a 2% escalation in rate. So they have no ability to call the loan due at the 5-year mark. It must be renewed.
So there's a good chance that would get us to cash flow neutral from that additional just pure expense of interest, but it's unlikely we would be cash flow negative. And then there's no way the loan can be called due. So excellent questions there. Let's talk about some of the disadvantages. So I think it's important for every strategy to be really excited about the upsides and to think about, well, what is possible and how can I do things differently? And how can I, set my life trajectory apart by using strategies that maybe aren't as common? It's important to do those things eyes wide open, understanding all of the potential disadvantages. So one of the disadvantages is this is a harder strategy. So it's pretty easy to buy real estate. I'm sure we all know that little old lady down the street or that little old guy down the street that has just owned, 5 rental properties for the last 50 years and, takes pretty good care of them, but doesn't do much with them and, gets some cash flow and is maybe going to sell some or give them to some of the grandchildren. It's pretty simple. This takes work. One of the questions is like, well, how do you manage this work? You have to have good spreadsheets. You have to have calendar reminders of, hey, I need to, if you buy a house today, set a calendar reminder for January of, in this market, 2024 of, hey, I need to refi the house that I bought in 2022. So it is harder. It's much more cognitively demanding. It can take a lot more capital up front, particularly if you're purchasing and renovating with cash, which is the optimal strategy. Or if you're going kind of that slower route where, let's say you're trying to buy like those first 4 houses yourself so that house number 1 can buy house number 5, it can take more capital. Some banks don't like it. Nick put that bullet point in there. I guess I would disagree, but some banks don't like it, right?
In general, they're happy to sell you a loan where you're putting down a down payment. And then as soon as you're proposing a loan where you no longer have skin in the game, they wince at that. And they'll frequently try to reel back the terms on the loan, lower LTVs, higher interest rates. The conventional lenders really egregiously penalize cash out refis on investment properties right now. So maybe you could get a 3% interest rate at a 75% LTV on a purchase for an investment property. And if you're doing a cash out refi, you're looking at a 70% LTV and a 5% interest rate or something like that. So that's just to say that the lenders penalize it, have far stricter underwriting, which always seems silly to me because there's an appraisal that's like a more accurate appraisal. Whereas in a market transaction, like it's just whatever the market price was, but the lender assumes that the market is wise, which it's usually pretty wise. Just there's a lot less questions in the underwriting with a purchase versus a refi, and you will be shocked at how different the underwriting is when you're doing a refi loan.
Yep. So sometimes refis can be hard to get. You just have to keep working with lots of small local banks. Adam asked a question, local to you or local to the property? Local to the property. Absolutely. And if you have out-of-state properties, you should plan to go meet as many bankers as you can face to face.
Yes.
So that you know them, so that you're a real person to them, and so that they know that you're vested in that community.
You never want to be perceived as an out-of-state absentee landlord. That a commercial lender will never write a loan to that persona, or they'll write a 50% LTV loan or something like that. But you never want to be perceived as an absentee out of area landlord.
You can generate more pre-tax cash by selling. So in that first example, I think it was like 61,000. Now that's pre-tax, not post-tax. So just know that there's going to be a tax penalty there. Increasing leverage reduces cash flow. I think we've hit that pretty hard on this presentation. And then a conventional loan penalizes a cash out refi. I think we've hit that pretty hard too. So the big advantage is you get to keep the property. And this is how you get to a 7-figure portfolio, an 8-figure portfolio. This is how you get to where, like, I drive around our neighborhoods and I'm like, I don't even know all the houses we own. I haven't even been inside of all of the houses that we own. And I don't say that to brag. I say that to be an example of what is possible. Any of you listening could make this happen. So we started when our household income was probably 75,000. I was in medical school. I didn't even have a job. We've had 3 babies along the way.
I wasn't making that much. Well, we were selling cars.
Yeah, with all of our
So-
side income and everything.
Yeah. But my base salary was like 55,000.
Yeah. We worked really hard to save that first bucket of about $50,000. Some of that was on credit cards, as Nick alluded to. But we knew that this strategy would take us places. And that is the main advantage, is that you can create truly life-changing wealth, a truly life-changing portfolio with the power of a cash out refi. Little to no capital left in the deal in the long term. And what we didn't really hit in this presentation is when you do this for long enough. So some of our properties now we've owned for like 10 years or 7 years. So we've done a second refi. I don't think we've done a third refi on anything yet.
Not yet.
But
This year's looking pretty good though.
some of our properties, we own them. We own the house. We had no money in the deal. And then we've also gotten like an additional, say $30,000 or $50,000.
It's like a grandparent. Like it's
yeah,
got a whole family of houses that it has bought over the years.
Yeah. And that it gets really, and when I look ahead, like, we try to target our cash out refis in the summer. That's just kind of how we operate our business. And I'm like, which houses are having babies this year? Like, It's just a lot of fun.
We'll do 1114 this year. That'll be our first 3rd generation refi. So so that was, we had a 6-figure spread in our value add play on that. I was working from 6 p.m. until 2 a.m. doing sweat equity rehab on it. And we bought it for $125K, did a $25K sweat equity rehab on it, and it appraised for $250 a few months later. So we did that initial financing run. Then we did a refi and we pulled another, 70,000 out of it or something like that. And then now we're ready to refi it again, probably. So it's probably worth 325 or something now. So
Yep. We would posit that the cash out refi strategy reduces risk. So when we think about, you have no money in the deal. So I am not advocating just let that thing go to foreclosure or just ride off into the sunset. Absolutely not. But it's important to think about, what is my plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G? Okay, and now I'm getting down to plan X, Y, Z. This isn't looking too good, but you better have those plans, particularly if you're going to go big. Your plan Z, if you have no money in the deal, is to walk away. And you walk away having had many good years with a property that produced a lot of income, and you tried your best and you did everything you possibly could. And again, this is plan Z. I want to be very clear here. This is not plan B. This is not plan F. This is not plan M. This is plan Z. This is like, everybody I know has died. There's no employers in town.
We're just being real here, because everyone says that leveraging your property, that levering up your property increases your risk. And yet that's not true. So if you relever the property and then you go waste the cash proceeds on, you go blow it in Vegas or something like that, then yes, that would increase your risk materially. But if you literally just put that money in the bank, like, that significantly reduces your risk. If you go out and you buy more properties that are also leveraged, in my opinion, you're still at a lower risk profile than having equity in that property. Equity is a magnet for lawsuit. And it's also a magnet for closure in the event that the lender wants to take back the asset, because they're wondering, can I get what is owed on it if I need to sell it, at a fire sale price? And if you have more leverage, that actually reduces the chances of the foreclosure event actually happening. That's the reality of the situation. We're not saying this is plan Z, but let's get real. increasing the leverage on your property increases your security. It reduces risk. I know that might
I
seem a
hope
little bit
that made
counterintuitive.
sense. Kind of me painting sort of this like melodramatic, the sky is falling picture, and then Nick doing it in more of a, the perspective of lawsuits and the bank. But I hope it makes sense to you that by having the cash in your control, you have reduced your overall risk. And that's very important.
Yep.
Um,
And keep the cash at a different bank than where you finance the loan.
Reduce sensitivity to market fluctuation. We covered that. When someone says, well, what if the value of my property goes down? You just hold through. The thing's producing cash flow, you're going to be okay. And then we've talked about the tax advantages. So we're at 8:24. I want to do at least,
We're at least halfway through our content.
no, I want to do at least 1 or 2 examples, but I don't want to go much beyond 90 minutes, because pretty soon we're going to have to call this like double hour, and like it's our marketing is going to be really bad because we're going to be changing the name every month.
Yeah.
So a couple of tips: buy and rehab with cash if you can. We talked about why that can be quite powerful. Conventional loans require seasoning. Commercial does not. Appraisers love seasoning. Master your appraisal process. So show up to your appraisal. If you're an out-of-market investor, there better be someone on your team that's showing up to the appraisal. It is so important to say, do you see that siding? That's the $5 siding, not the $2 siding. Do you see that shingle? That's a 50-year shingle. Look at this bathroom. Not only is there's a new vanity here, but all of the plumbing is new too. And here's the permit. That's really important. An appraiser, I kid you not, is in a property for 3.5 minutes. And I think that's generous.
We get the time slide, they have to
We
check in
follow
and
them
check out.
around, and we're like, oh, that was fast. Like, we've been in this house 20 times and we couldn't have looked at it that quickly. So you need someone there that's saying, these are all the renovations we did. And let's say you're doing that yield play, just to say all the great things about that home, making sure they understand how many bedrooms there are, bathrooms. I can tell you how many appraisals we've missed, beds and baths, square footage, schools. Appraisal process is
One
really
of these days
important.
they'll miss the house altogether. I thought
Crazy.
that was a vacant lot.
If you do this really quickly, let's say in less than like a 3-month time period, you can run into issues where the original mortgage isn't even recorded at the courthouse yet. And so
No.
that can,
The bank freaks out a little bit. So just be ready for
yeah.
that.
So if you know you want to do this really quickly, just be aware of that. Spend the money wisely. Don't do a cash out refi and go to Vegas and blow it all. Don't do a cash out refi and do things like buy cars or clothing or whatever. Either take the money and put it in the bank, which isn't a great strategy, but at least provide you with security. Please take the money and buy more assets, and don't refi into cash flow negative.
Stay positive. So we've talked about lots of fantastical examples, right? Like there's no way this actually works in the real world. So across our whole portfolio, we've got 60 properties that we, own 100% ourselves, and we have no cash in that entire portfolio. We have more than cashed out of the entire portfolio, multiple times over. Our average time to do a full cash out refi is less than 2 years. And most commonly, historically, we've been able to do it in less than 90 days on really deep value add properties. Yield plays, it's still less than 2 years. We've made over $2 million in profit in 2021, including cash flow appreciation and debt pay down. So it's like whatever amount of cash is left in some of these properties, if we don't get a full cash out refi, it's a rounding error compared to kind of the overall profitability from the portfolio. So that's the whole portfolio.
So this is our very first rental property that we purchased specifically as an investment property. Our first was the home that I lived in before we were married. We still own it. We talked to the tenant yesterday.
He's
So
moving
this,
out. They're building a house.
everybody that's lived in that home except us has had a baby. It's crazy. Nick's like, oh, you had a baby. And I'm like Nick was in the passenger seat. I'm in the driver's seat. I like looked over.
Another one.
I'm like, they had a baby. There's something in the water there.
We've had that house for 13 years, and
Everybody has had a baby
all
there except
babies.
us.
Yeah.
So this was the first one that we purchased. We paid $35,000 for this stunner. I think you can look at it and see why we paid $35,000. It had been vacant for 9 years before we acquired it.
That's what it looked like after we fixed it up.
Because that would have been like spring of 2015 before we did the landscaping and we painted it. And so we spent about $17,000 on our rehab. If we had contracted that out, it might have been closer to say $27,000, but we did a lot of the work ourselves. So we had an all-in cost of about $52,000. It appraised for $85,000. So we received $55,000 in a cash out refi. This whole process, because we paid cash, took about maybe 8 weeks or so. So that's where I was saying we had like $3,000 in the
6
bank
6 weeks total.
for about a month or so. But then we had more money in the bank than we had started with. And we had a fully fixed up, nice home that was cash flowing. You can see we laid all this tile, we redid the kitchen, we redid the bathroom, we put in this deck door, we did all new windows, all new roof, all new HVAC. Today that home's worth about $125,000. We only have $37,000 in debt, so we have about $90,000 in equity. So this
And
will be
there's
one.
no cash in the deal, right? So that's all.
So this will be one that
Already.
we cash out refi again this summer. So this house will then have grand houses.
So we'll
basically.
have, way over $100,000 in profit on a $35,000 house.
I hope that makes sense. Any questions about kind of the mechanics of how this works when we're going through like the real examples here? Charlene asked, with this strategy, is there ever reason to inject new money, like inject money from your regular job if you want to grow faster? So all the way through, we became addicted to injecting new money. I mean, we would literally say things like,
We could buy a new car, but like that could be a house in a few years.
yeah.
So
When
why-
you look at things through the lens of that could be a house, you're like, oh. And again, we don't live this like super austere life. We take our kids on vacation. We've been to Alaska and Hawaii and lots of different
we
things.
just knew how many houses it cost us.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of our own money, growing the portfolio as much as possible.
Yep.
Um,
Will the strategy work if interest rates go up? Absolutely nothing changes.
It gets harder. It's all the cycle is always either getting harder or getting easier. But when everyone else thinks it's getting easier, you as a real estate investor know that there are things that are getting harder. Like it's going to be harder to get debt. Banks aren't going to want to work with you. You're going to have to deal with staying up late at night, wondering if your properties are decreasing in value. So there's always parts of the strategy that are easy and always parts of the strategy that are more challenging.
This first property, we got a 6%, 65% LTV loan on it, because that was our first commercial loan. We didn't know how to negotiate a good commercial loan. That was the only loan we could figure out how to get on such an inexpensive home, less than 100,000. So worked great at 6% interest, works even better at 3%. It'll work again when we're at 6%.
So this is an investor portfolio. I'm sure you recognize that beautiful blue siding there. So these numbers are for this top blue house. So this house was purchased for $173,000 in November of 2019. We did less than $10,000 in improvements. I kind of call that a shine. So not quite a rehab, but a little more than just, a deep clean and moving someone in. That was refied like literally just a few weeks ago.
Yep.
For $220,000. So the investor got $176,000 in net loan proceeds. So she's not quite to cash flow zero, but she's pretty close. She has about less than $10,000 in this house.
At which point your rate of return, it's, you have like a 100% cash on cash rate of return.
So she bought all three of these properties within, say, like a 6-week time period in fall of 2019. The two ranches were just, $10,000, $5,000 of moderate kind of shine. We talked about the big renovation for the blue siding. And then she just did a cash out refi almost exactly 2 years later with a small blanket commercial mortgage and got the extreme majority of her money out across these three properties. She probably has about $25,000 in them.
Then it's putting that capital into an apartment building that we own in a joint venture partnership with her, where we're doing a huge rehab. So we're going to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a rehab for this apartment building. So we can do a cash out refi to return that capital to do it all over again. So it's almost like that 1031 exchange ladder, but you don't have to sell. She gets to keep all the houses.
This is our most recent example. So we acquired this home with an investor in July of 2021. We paid $155,000 for it cash. We did a $25,000 renovation, so about $180,000 all in.
Pretty hefty renovation relative to purchase price.
Yeah, this house was in really bad shape. Lots of cat urine and
Order.
yeah, it was just a bad situation. So it refied for $220,000, $176,000 in net loan proceeds. So about $5,000 are left in this deal. It generates about $250 per month in cash flow. So in about 2 years, that last $5,000 will be completely repaid. but there was no sense waiting for the market
Yep.
to,
Yep.
grow the value of the house to do the cash out refi.
You don't have to get a full cash out refi. This is a home run success, even though we're leaving $5,000 in the deal. A 300% rate of return. That's normal when you can get down to such a small amount of cash left in the deal.
Yep. And a 60% cash on cash rate of return. This used to be very, very common. This is very uncommon right now, but they are still out there.
Yep. So
Go ahead.
yeah, this works great in apartments too. So we bought this building with tons of vacancy. Apartment buildings are valued based on net operating income and cap rate. So basically you just multiply the income by say 20x. So if the building makes 100,000 per year in net operating income, then that building is worth a couple $1 million. You multiply that 100K by 20 and you get $2 million. Am I doing that math right? Yeah. So this building, because it has some vacancy problems, had low net operating income, we're able to purchase it for $9.9 million in the fall of 2021. So 7 months ago or something like that, 6 months ago.
Yep. August.
And we've been able to fill it up. We've been able to reduce expenses. We've been able to raise rents, been able to start charging for parking and other amenities like that. So we have radically increased the net operating income of the asset. So today, its book value would be approximately $13 million. So we've been able to drive $3 million of value to this asset in just a 6-month time period. You really can't do that with single family. So that's a huge advantage of multifamily, is that you're able to ratchet up the value in a really massive way. So we're having a dinner with a commercial lender next week to discuss doing a cash out refi on this project. Usually they're not very excited about doing that within the 1 year time frame, but we've been keeping in touch with this lender every month, going out to dinner and just having phone calls, just talking about how great things are going. And finally the lender was like, Nick, I think we could probably talk about a cash out refi, because we made it clear what we want. And so the lender finally brought it up and said, yeah, we could talk about it. We could have that conversation. So this is the exact same business model. At this point, we could sell this asset and reap a profit of $3 million. But it would be the same situation as that single family home, the Golden Goose example. Like, why would we sell an asset that's just knocking it out of the park when we could do a cash out refi to return investor capital, and everything after that is just gravy.
Absolutely. And then let's talk about a value add. Oh, so let me be clear. This one, very little physical renovations. We put in a fence to put in a dog park.
New exercise equipment. Cleaning, lots of cleaning.
We put new flooring in like a few units that needed it, but nothing major, especially for a building of this size. We drove up the value of this one by improving operations.
Yep.
And that's a strategy that's not really available in single family homes. What is available in single family homes is the value add strategy. And the value add strategy is also available in multifamily. So this is Garden Court West, very similar to New 52. So $9.8 million purchase price. I think this was purchased in July, like 3 weeks apart. 64 units, 1965 construction. It appraised at $11.8 million at time of close. We're going to do a huge renovation here, a $1.4 million renovation. It's going to take about 18 months or so to do so.
And just a little way in today, it's probably worth about 13.5 million, somewhere in that territory.
Yeah. So our as completed appraisal was 15.8 million, which means after we complete that $1.4 million of renovation, the buildings should be worth about a little under 16 million. But we don't have to get all that way to do the cash out refi. We really only need to get to about 13.5 million to do the cash out refi, and then continue to do the renovations, because it's the right thing to do, because it's going to improve the community. That's going to set things up for the second cash out refi, say 5 years from now. So we're expecting a cash out refi in about a year of ownership on this one, with an entirely different strategy than New 52. Even though the starting line was very similar. One was in July, one was in August, one was 9.8, one was 9.9. One was an operations play, one was a value add play. But as soon as either of them get to about 13 million, we can do a cash out refi, get all the money out, and then continue to own them. And we're very clear with the bank that that's our strategy from the beginning. So when we're shopping for that first loan, we're telling them, this is our business plan. Is that going to be okay? And some banks are like, no, I don't really like that strategy. Totally fine. We just say, you know what, you're not the bank for us, then that's totally fine. But we, in in multifamily, again, it's much more that the asset is a business. And so they just want to know, what's your business plan? Well, this is our business plan. And so we look for a banker that really understands that.
There's a neat question there. When a property appraised at a higher price during the loan process, can you tap into that instant equity? Anyway, absolutely not. We had about $1 million in equity in both of these purchases. So an appraiser said they're worth more than they're paying for it, but the bank absolutely will not let you tap into that equity. You have to go through a cash out refi in order to access that equity. There's reasons for that, some silly, some reasonable. So we knew we had $1 million of equity there, but until we did a cash out refi, we were unable to access it.
Yep. Very good question. Meetblackswan.com is kind of our landing page for our calendar, our Facebook group, our single family at scale course, lots of other fun things on there. So hop over there if you want to get connected to our communities or schedule a time to meet with us one-on-one. We love to do that. We are at 8:40. I think
I feel
we'll,
like we had a lot of questions. We could maybe do a tiny bit of Q&A or
yeah.
But that's the whole slide deck. We hope that
Give me like a genuine, like, don't tell me you understood it. If you don't, you won't hurt my feelings, but I want to know, does this help you understand the cash out refi strategy? Can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Good.
we got 5, 6, we got
Good.
some thumbs up.
I do find that this is a complicated thing for people to understand. And that was part of our goal here, is to get this message out, to do so, to take enough time, right? I think if you spend 90 minutes to learn a life-changing strategy, that is a 90-minute time frame well spent. And then now we can have this to share with other people when they say, I just quite don't understand a cash out refi. We can send them this video. So I'm really glad to hear that it made sense. We tried to present it in a bunch of different ways and give examples and stuff.
And
So
tell the same story, 4 or 5 different ways, and hopefully it made sense to everybody.
yeah.
Are you guys syndicating larger multifamily deals? Are you rep status? Yes, we have real estate professional status, and yes, we have a private equity fund. You go to blackswanfund1.com. We'll have Fund 2 coming later this year. Fund 1 is closed at this time. Yes, we'll send out a recording of this video.
That'll go out
replay.
tomorrow
Yep.
or maybe the next day. It takes a little bit of time to upload the video and everything. But yep, we put all of these up on YouTube and send them out to our list.
Yep. When you do a cash out refi on an owner occupied home that has a HELOC, do you have to close the HELOC? Yes. When, we already answered
Can you
that
get a
one.
commercial loan on a 1 to 4 unit building? Yes, absolutely. So you cannot get a conventional loan on a 5 unit or larger building. You can only get a conventional loan on 1, 2, 3, or 4 units. You can get a commercial loan on anything. Many of the single family homes that we shared here have commercial loans on them. And then commercial loans are the only thing that you can use to buy anything that's 5 units or higher.
Yep. With a blanket portfolio refi, do all the properties need to be in the same state? Unless you're working with a mega bank like Wells Fargo or something like that. Yes. In fact, commercial banks are hyper local. Real estate is hyper local, and banks realize that. So if their bank is in the northwest side of town and this property is on the southeast side of town, they may not want to touch it. If you have a portfolio and most of your properties are on the northwest side and there's a couple on the southeast side, they'll probably do it. But we've literally had banks that they won't go 5 miles away. It's just not, they know that it's a hyper local thing. They know block by block their market. They only operate in their market, and they don't go anywhere outside of their market.
I think we mostly hit most of the questions as we kind of went along. We tried hard to read them. If you have a question and we didn't get to it, hop over to the Facebook group and leave it there, and we'll answer it sometime in the next day or so. You can also always schedule a one-on-one call with us if you'd like to chat more. But I think with that, we will call it a night. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope this has been a good use of your time. We love connecting with you guys. Next month, we are doing our 2022 State of the Market. We did our State of the Market last year, I think in like March or April. And I think most of that
I think it was pretty accurate.
Yeah, generally came true.
We should do like a review of like the presentation from last
do it.
year.
Let's
and
do
see how accurate we were.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta rewatch it now.
So we've been working on that presentation, but we will work on that presentation until the minute before we go live, because we want that to be the the most up-to-date information we can possibly give you to guide you into the spring and summer of 2022 season. Spoiler alert, it's going to be hot. It's going to be difficult, and there's going to be a lot of profit up for grabs. So
It's a good thing if you already own real estate.
it's a wonderful thing if you already own real estate. So buy as much real estate as you can.
Yep.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And we will see you later.
Bye.
Bye, guys.